Megan's alarm clock went off at 5 a.m., but she was already awake. Anxiety was a weight on her chest, heavier than the comforter. The bank statement, with its negative balance, burned in her mind. How did we get here? She wondered. Every month, her paycheck arrived and evaporated in the blink of an eye, swallowed by bills, interest, and the feeling that the ground was crumbling beneath her feet. Millions of Americans, like Megan, live this silent reality. Bankruptcy doesn't happen suddenly. It creeps in, month after month, eroding hope until the only sound left is the silence of despair. The metallic sound at the front gate on a Saturday morning was Robert's fear. A 45-year-old mechanic in Ohio. The mortgage foreclosure notice, which he had struggled to ignore, had finally arrived. The constant increase in interest rates and runaway inflation had turned his dream of homeownership into a nightmare. Robert and his wife, Susan, had cut costs everywhere they could, dining out, movies, even high-speed internet. But every small saving was swallowed by a price increase in gas, food, and the house payment, which seemed to magically grow each month. He felt like a failure, despite working harder than ever. Robert's story isn't unique. The causes of personal bankruptcy in the U.S. are rarely a single event but rather a perfect storm of factors. Recent statistical data shows that the increase in bankruptcy filings has been driven primarily by growing consumer debt, especially in credit cards and mortgages, where interest rates have soared. But the biggest culprit, according to experts, is the rising cost of living. Healthcare, for example, is a bottomless pit. One medical emergency can wipe out a lifetime of savings. More than 66% of all bankruptcies in the U.S. are directly linked to medical expenses. The lack of a robust emergency fund turns a small setback, like a broken-down car or an unexpected dental bill, into an irreversible financial crisis. Bankruptcy becomes the only path to a fresh start. With each notice that arrived, Robert's certainty was that for millions, the real crisis isn't the lack of work, but the powerlessness of having a salary that simply doesn't keep up with reality. The pile of bills on Emily's kitchen table in Seattle was an insurmountable mountain. The young single graphic designer, with a good salary, was drowning in credit card debt. Each impulsive purchase was a promise of happiness that didn't last, leaving behind a trail of interest and guilt. One day, after crying over her statements, she decided it was time to act. The first step was the hardest: facing reality. She listed all her debts, from smallest to largest, and realized she needed a plan, not a miracle. Emily's strategy was based on a method proven by financial experts, the snowball method. Instead of trying to pay off all her debts at once, which can be discouraging, she focused her efforts on paying off the smallest debt first. While making minimum payments on all the others, she directed as much money as possible to the smallest one. When that debt was eliminated, she used the money that would have gone to it and added it to the payment for the next smallest debt, like a snowball that grows as it rolls. The feeling of victory in crossing each item off the list was the emotional fuel she needed to continue. Additionally, she renegotiated the interest on some credit card debts and sought a lower interest line of credit to consolidate others, which reduced her monthly payment. Analyzing her budget showed that her salary wasn't the problem, but how it was being directed. Emily's journey back to financial stability was painful, but the lesson she learned was invaluable. The discipline to plan and the courage to face the problem are the first and most powerful steps toward financial freedom. Alex, a young engineer who just graduated in California, got a call. It was his mother asking about the new car he had just bought. Alex's proud smile faded when she mentioned the extremely high-interest financing he had barely read. Alex, like many in his generation, had the technical knowledge to build bridges, but lacked the basic knowledge to build a solid financial future. He was trapped in the consumer cycle, believing that happiness came with the new and not with security. With each interest payment, he felt a tightness in his chest, realizing that his lack of information was costing him much more than he could have imagined. Alex's story highlights a fundamental problem. The lack of financial education is at the root of many failures. According to data from the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, a significant percentage of American adults cannot correctly answer basic questions about interest, inflation, and risk. This leads to catastrophic errors, such as taking out loans with exorbitant rates, not saving for retirement, or failing to build an emergency fund. The solution, as Alex realized, is not just about earning more, but about understanding how money works. He started reading books on personal finance, listening to podcasts, and using apps to track every penny he spent. Learning to differentiate between wants and needs became his new skill. He dedicated himself to understanding compound interest, the trap of credit card minimum payments, and the importance of paying yourself first, setting aside a portion of his salary for savings before paying any other bills. This new mindset not only helped him get out of car debt, but also prepared him to build a secure financial future. Financial education proved to be the real investment, with interest that, instead of eroding, multiplied his peace of mind. Maria, a nurse from Texas, felt trapped in her routine. Her salary, although stable, covered the bills and little else. The idea of traveling or buying a house seemed like a distant dream. She and her husband, David, needed a boost of energy and, more importantly, money. It was David who had the idea. In a conversation with a friend, he discovered the world of side hustles and accessible investments. And they realized they didn't need a large amount of capital to start. The desire for a better future, and not the fear of the present, became the engine for change. Maria and David's journey began with the search for extra income. She used her nursing knowledge to take shifts at clinics on the weekends. And he, who was good at home repairs, started offering his plumbing and electrical services to neighbors. The extra income wasn't used for consumption, but rather for investment. They opened a brokerage account and, with little money, began investing in ETFs, exchange-traded funds, which allowed them to buy small fractions of hundreds of companies with a single investment, reducing risk. Diversification, which seemed like a complicated term to them, actually meant they weren't putting all their eggs in one basket. They also allocated part of the money to REITs, real estate investment trusts, which are funds that invest in real estate, allowing them to receive passive rental income without having to buy a physical property. Each month, their portfolio grew, and with it, their confidence. They understood that the small steps taken today would turn into a long-distance race, building a new reality where financial freedom was not just a dream, but an achievable goal. The snow fell softly outside John's window, a teacher in Wisconsin. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace brought a feeling of comfort, that the real security he felt came from his financial planning. At 55, he didn't live in luxury, but he had something many of his colleagues had lost: peace of mind. John had seen friends go through health crises and disastrous retirements, and he swore he would do everything differently. The lesson he learned wasn't about how to earn more, but how to protect what he already had. John's strategy for a secure future was multifaceted and disciplined. The first pillar was the emergency fund, which he kept in an easily accessible savings account with the equivalent of 6 months of expenses. This reserve was his salvation when he needed emergency surgery and, years later, when he needed an unexpected roof repair. The second pillar was insurance. He got a robust life and health insurance policy, knowing that a single medical emergency in the U.S. could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. The third pillar was retirement investing. From an early age, John contributed to his 401k plan and, later, to an IRA account, taking advantage of the power of compound interest to multiply his money over the decades. He reviewed his portfolio annually with a financial advisor, ensuring that the asset allocation was aligned with his goals and risk tolerance. John's life wasn't a journey without challenges. But his solid financial planning shielded him from the storms. He was living proof that true freedom isn't about spending without thinking, but about building a future where money is a tool for peace of mind, not a source of constant worry.